Review, we take a look at what's making headlines, analyze it, and see whether it's been rightly prioritized. Of course, the details you would have to read, but of course, take us a quick skim over. And we have in studio with me Dr. Duncan Ojwang, who's the Dean of School of Law, African Nazarene University. Welcome to the show.
Good morning,
as well as Mr. Abdi Wahab Sheikh Abdi Samad, who is an African Affairs commentator. Welcome to the show. Now, let's start off with both a story that's making headlines across board, and we have that unfortunate incident at the ferry whereby a vehicle with a mother and daughter plunged into the Indian Ocean. And on the Daily Nation, we are told horror as helpless mother and child plunge into Likoni abyss of death, while on the Standard, the headline is security lapse to blame for ferry deaths. And we are, as we've heard from a report by Tobias Chanji, the bodies of the two have not yet been retrieved from the ocean. So, of course, it has been termed as a shame because the agencies that are tasked with ensuring the safety did not apparently react in time to save the two in a manner that would have actually ensured that they're still with us here. And I'd like to start with you, Dr. Duncan Ojwang. What do you feel about this story?
It's a very sad one. Every time we see during our national celebration, our colleagues, our heroes on white uniform, the Navy.
The Navy.
We are told they are based in the coast. And the helplessness and the agony of waiting that nobody can plunge into the sea and bring them for more than 24 hours now.
Yeah.
I mean, it is showing how vulnerable and how helpless we are. And, you know, we take that ferry every time we are down in Mombasa. And you know, to me, it will never be another innocent ride, imagining what could happen. So the family are there, the ferry services are there, without any inkling that they are up to task. It is lapse after lapse. The biggest lapse is actually after the thing plunged, the car plunged in the ocean, that there is no meaningful effort, including now at this point, whether it is the bodies or anything, and the family are waiting at the shore, heartbroken. And as you can see from the pictures, well, of course, there's a picture of the two that you can see on your screen, and of course there are other pictures of the ferry itself and the distraught relatives right there hoping for some closure on this unfortunate story. If you read through the story, you find details of the husband who had elected to stay home, not to go with them, and he had to run on barefoot from Tudor all the way to the ferry just to try and see and confirm if this was indeed his family, and clearly it was. And they're still waiting for the bodies to be recovered. Well, they were not able to be saved, but at least the dignity of getting the bodies out is quite important. Your take on this, Mr. Abdul?
Definitely, I agree with him. It's security lapse to blame, because the issue, the capacity of Kenyan Navy to rescue what they call the ferry, I think that thing is missing, to be honest with you. So it's not the first time we see such kind of tragedy in that part of Mombasa. But unfortunately, we are not learning any lesson at all. It seems that the security, you know, they slept on job. So we have to rethink again, you know, the safety and security of those, you know, communities. It's a responsibility of the government of the day to safeguard the security of the community. So that it's a very unfortunate, it's a sad issue, in fact, a sad situation, what we have seen today. We have seen, you know, helpless mother and 4-year-old, just, you know, it's very unfortunate. It's a very painful story, by the way.
And you know, the Coast Guard was relaunched last year, and this is not the first time they're being rolled out. So we have the Coast Guard and we also have the Navy that have actually found the location of the vehicle, but they say this is a very tricky area to play devil's advocate to conduct an operation such as this, determining it is very sensitive, and therefore this is what they're attributing to that delay. Now let's shift gears to a story, the BBI. That's the story on the headline. The Standard is telling us, will BBI deliver Uhuru and Raila handshake deal. Now, some of the issues that have been highlighted in a blurb down there are the 9-point agenda of the Uhuru-Raila Pact. Now, one issue is ethnic antagonism, lack of national ethos. We have inclusivity, devolution. We have divisive election, security, corruption, and shared prosperity, as well as responsibility. Now, a big question was that how do you legislate, or how do you ensure these things even if they're put into the constitution, they're actually followed through? Something such as responsibility or national ethos. Is putting it into the constitution enough? And pictured right there is, of course, that famous handshake that was felt across the nation, so to speak, politically. Now, what do you feel about that, Doctor?
I'm glad you said what I feel, not what I think.
Yes.
I'm imagining what happens if the members of the task force don't agree. Because they seem to not have formed clear rules of engagement.
Yes.
So what forms the majority within that group? How about if they disagree? How about if there's dissent?
Yes.
Will we know the dissent? Worst case scenario, how about if they present the report to the principals and the principals disagree with all of them?
Yes.
Or the principal, one of them agrees and one of them disagree. I'm looking at those 9 points, and it is sad because I am sure when I look at the article that formed the BBI,
right,
there's no reference to our 2010 constitution, and they are talking as if from independent up to now, Kenya have not done any reform.
Yes.
So that tangu in Uhuru, this has what has been going on. By 2010, you know, the people-driven constitution sat, and actually all these 9 points are well taken care of.
Within
Our
the
constitution is captured and rendered impotent by the same politicians.
Yes.
So, and they start from a wrong notion and premise, in my view, of blaming the constitution and blaming the law. I think it's lack of manners. We lack the constitutionalism, not the constitution. And I've checked how BBI has even been calling participants. It's through a text. It is so opaque. They have gone to, I think, 24 counties. They have not told us how they pick those counties. They have not, unlike the constitutional review, which told us clearly these are the views. You don't see what people have said.
Yes.
We don't know where the secretariat is. We don't know their location. It's a hit and miss. You know, when they were in Nairobi, they asked people to come to KICC. And so my view, as one of the people who probably like constitution and teach sometimes constitutional law, is Kenya should protect the constitution they have. This, I think, whether it is building bridges, it might build walls. We don't know the outcome. We don't know what will come out of it. It acts as if we have never done any reform. And all of a sudden, you cannot make public policy through individual action. You cannot make public policy through individual action. So in my view, I don't feel Kenya is facing a constitutional moment. That means the yearn for change, in my view, is not here. And to conclude, so that my able colleague can respond, I believe that when the handshake happened, former Prime Minister was clear that he wanted constitutional review, and they chose to drive him the longest way. I think this is 1 year wasted. If you wanted to change constitution, you don't start by wasting 1 year in a process that is not anchored or recognized as a way of changing constitution, which is either through parliament or through a county. So he has to start afresh. And I think whoever sent him the BBI route almost sent him the dinosaur's way. And people are tired, they are tired, and then now you are asked to start afresh, assuming the report agrees with all of them and what they want, there is no dissent there, and that they still have energy to start the process afresh.
And I love that you pointed out that there isn't much wrong with our constitution. It has to do with implementation. And just before I get to you, Mr. Abdi Samad, I'd love to read a quote right here by Aden Duale, who's the majority leader in the National Assembly. He says, the only change in the constitution that I want the BBI to bring is a pure parliamentary system of governance, and we discard presidential system. So nothing, it's not even one of these 9 points that are supposed to be the agenda of that BBI. Over to you.
Honestly, I have a very unique concept about this issue.
Yeah.
Always, we talk about, forming a committee or commission after every election. So, Africa, there is no democracy in Africa, to be honest with you. What you want today is only good governance. Okay. Forget about the democracy. Africa is 54 states. I'm telling you, there is no a single, democratic state in Africa today, apart maybe from Ghana, Botswana, and South Africa. So the question is, we need a dual election. From 1997, when we conducted the first election, we spent more than 2 billion shilling, taxpayers. Up to 2017, we also spent 7.2 billion. If you put together all this amount, it can tarmac the entire northern Kenya. So we really need what they call an election. We don't need the election. We don't need it's a waste of time and resources. To be honest with you, changing the constitution, we have one of the best constitutions in Africa today. Our constitution is intact. It has no, you don't even need to change it. Just what he needs is implementation of the constitution, nothing else. Are we together? This is a waste time of resource. We tired about the Uhuru, we tired of the Raila, we tired of the Musali Mudafiri, we tired of Watangula. We are hearing all those names for the last 30 years. So we need right now the young generation to talk over the country, and in fact the country move forward. So these kind of things, bringing what they call the side of the people, we don't intend this issue anymore. What basically I'm saying is we don't want what they call election. If Uhuru is going to rule the country for the 100 years, I don't care. I like it. Because we want what they call a good governance. I don't want a democracy. We want, what we are looking for is a service delivery. Are we getting the service we require? Is the judiciary is the independent organ, whereby if today somebody wrong me, I can meet in the corridor of the justice. Such kind of things we are looking for. Look, in what they call Gulf states, like Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they are not democracy there, but they're good governance there. People are getting the services. So what I'm saying is, let those guys, the Raila and the Gideon Moy and what you call the Uhuru come together and rule the country for the next 100 years. We don't want to waste our time what they call the democracy and changing the constitution here and there all the time. This is the bullshit I'm telling you. We don't need it. What do we want? A good governance. Always we are talking about politics. After 1 year for the election, politics. What time are we going to deliver the services?
It's a waste of time.
Waste of time and resources.
True.
Yes.
And just to add, I've listened on this issue on one of the most credible person, I believe, Professor Yash Gai, who chaired our constitutional review process, sourced by the former Prime Minister Raila when he was in Korea by that time, and delivered the new constitution. And he looked us straight in the eye and said, all these 9 points are well captured in the 2010 Constitution. Actually, by the time Kenyans were sitting to do the 2010 Constitution, these were the issues bedeviling us. And up to now, we have not even done a clear stock of why have this Constitution not worked. But it has been captured by the same powers that be. And so in his view, and I being his student and believe in what he said, let us protect the Constitution we have. And not get into the wild chess where we don't know what will come out with.
And do you agree with what Mr. Abdi Samad is saying, that we do not necessarily need a democracy, an ideal democracy? Should we give up on that and just focus on the demand for delivery by our government?
Probably not so much whether I agree or not. I believe what he's disputing is the Western version of democracy. That has not worked in Africa. The individualistic, the extreme competitive, the manipulation now that we even moved to electronic,
Right.
we found that there is nothing easier to steal and manipulate than electronic.
Yeah.
So there is no faith, there is no culture, there is no habit, there is no ethos. And so I believe what he's saying is that the Western version of democracy have failed. Not that democracy have failed. We can have democracy our way, but our democracy that rely on international observer, that rely on Otimofo, that relies on IBC, that rely on the electronic dissemination of the votes, have kind of failed us.
Yeah, I mean, it has worked.
Let me add a few things. Why I'm saying democracy failed in Africa.
Yes.
Africa, if you look at across the continent, tell me a single democratic state in Africa, apart from Botswana and South Africa and Ghana.
Maybe.
Honestly speaking, even the Ghana itself, it has some loopholes.
Issues, yeah.
So, wasting our resources, in elections will not help the situation at all. So, we need the democracy. We don't need it. We need a good governance.
Right.
So, all these names we hear for the last 20 years, mention it. Ruto, Raila, Mussolini, Watangula. These guys, they came on music, music in our ears. Honestly speaking, we don't need it. What we need today is a good governance. Are they going to deliver the services required? As I told you, as I told you earlier, we spend more than 22 billion US dollar for the last five elections. That one, it can turn back the entire northern Kenya. So why wasting our time changing the constitution? There is no way we can change the constitution. We have a very good constitution, by the way. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And joining the conversation is a former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Farah Maalim. Welcome to the show. And we are talking about the BBI, as has been covered on the top, the lead story of the Standard. Will BBI deliver Uhuru Raila handshake deal? And the 9 points have been mentioned there: ethnic antagonism, lack of national ethos, inclusivity, and the panel has insisted that these are things that are captured in the Constitution already, and therefore the BBI and the handshake is not deemed, it's not putting a good case forward for its relevance at this time. And of course, Aden Duale, Majority Leader in the National Assembly, has said the only change he wants to see in the Constitution is a pure parliamentary system of government and have the presidential system discarded. So what's your take on this push for the BBI?
Well, to begin with, it's interesting that Aden Duale is asking for a pure parliamentary system.
Yes.
When in reality, his very close friend, the deputy president, is known not to be in favor of that.
Yeah.
And if you followed up on the kind of questions that were being asked when this team was going round, I don't think there's any content on that. I don't think Kenyans gave opinions on whether they would prefer a parliamentary system to a presidential system.
Yes.
Because it was not one of the questions that were that often asked wherever they went. But I want to believe that the former Prime Minister had all along emphasized that possibility, a parliamentary system, which in his opinion, and in my opinion also, is more accountable, because you have a Prime Minister who's accountable to the people through Parliament. We were running away from an imperial president. Kenyatta first was an imperial president, so was Moi, and that's why we had mooted for the idea of whether it's going to be through a mixed arrangement as through the National Accord when we had Kibaki and Raila, or it's going to be a pure parliamentary system. Many of us had always felt that a parliamentary system delivers better, was more ideal. Now, he is for the opinion. But what I also hear is that the biggest contention right now, one of the reasons why we are unable to have the report presented by BBI.
They are disagreed.
They are disagreed on that particular contention. Because Uhuru is probably not that much in favor of a parliamentary system at this stage now. whatever he felt in the first place. There was a feeling, which I also felt, that in addition to delivering a good system for us, like all politicians who are political animals, they look for their interests. We had seen the possibility of Uhuru literally going for what's called a self-succession. He leaves the presidency and becomes the prime minister. So that possibility was not a fear, but a kind of a realization at the back of many people's minds. And we didn't know how the country was going to take that. So the fact that there is an issue right now, there's a disagreement, total disagreement. How far the handshake will move on from here? Now I hear speculations, handshake or no handshake, Raila is putting his shoulders together and his forces together, because that possibility is there. Unfortunately, my good Luo friends who have happened to be my political comrades for a very long time, for a very long time, right from the first time I entered politics, I was with Jaramogi and with Raila also for a number of years. They are, even at that very high level, unfortunately, they are extremely gullible. You know, they are so honest, so you know, they don't hold anything back. The pompous they are, and the self-confidence they have, also reflects on their political disposition. They don't hold back anything. So they assumed this was going to be a deal that will entail, in the very least, a parliamentary system and a ceremonial president, in the very, very least. That doesn't seem to be now coming out. So we are looking at what kind of reaction is going to come out of this now, and how the political rearrangement is going to work out. Unfortunately, I mean, Uhuru is a smart political operator, unlike what most people think. But I think he pulled this card a little bit too early. It did give us a very good respite, because the economy was going to be on its knees. Not that the economy is out of the woods. Our economy is getting worse every day on a daily basis.
But it's better compared to that.
It's better compared to that immediately after the election. We were going to literally collapse. You know, there's no doubt about that. So that was a good thing. And they both have an interest, because they're both businessmen. For information, let me tell you, in addition to being politicians, they are both businessmen. They are not just ideological politicians who are looking at these things the way Nyerere or Obote or any of those other guys, or even the guy in Ghana now. Ghana looks at it, or no, they have their business interests, which they at the very least will also will protect. So I think we are in a situation, and in which we need here nor there, to be very honest.
Absolutely. And we're told that the task force is holed up in a secret hideout, believed to be either in Nairobi or Kajiado. So let's wait and see how it comes out.
I have a feeling that, look, what I was told is that certain quarters, the Uhuru quarter to be exact, I mean, let's call a spade, is saying we never fronted this question. We never asked for Kenyans a choice between a parliamentary and a presidential system. It's an assumption that was in the back of a certain political leaders in line with that inclusivity. You see, the inclusivity basically meant that let's have a situation in which this country is not ruled by only two tribes. We're all the major tribes. By the way, that's still, there's very little room for the small tribes like ours. Although we are progressively running towards that. And you never know, the next census, we might also join that big league. But I'm talking about a conglomeration of a new alliance which has to be crafted of all these small communities coming together because this is how the political picture of the country is looking at, which is very sad, by the way, extremely sad. So if any one of them who pulls a respected, person who does not have any skeletons in the cupboard and shelves his own ambitions and says we want to have a new paradigm shift and this country has got to go on a new footing and bring somebody clean You could be Abduhab, you could be Professor Ojuang, my old friend. But if it's a recycling of just the same old, then of course we still not out.
Just 1 second.
Yes.
To add on what Speaker Faramali have elaborated very well.
Yeah.
In my opinion, whoever sent Baba the BBI route knew they are sending him the longest route to constitutional reform. and I believe, because it was clear he wanted constitutional reform.
Yeah.
This is not how to get constitutional reform. And in the middle, he realized this is 1 year wasted,
Yes.
but I have to wait for the report. And remember, to his credit, he said, then we can now sit, then start the process all over. So there is a little bit of a game there. But beyond that, they didn't establish the rules. This report requires how many members of task force for it to be adopted? And what do we do with the dissent? And what do we do with if the report does not please both the principles?
Yes.
Then where does it go? So it was a game without rules. You know how you are told, don't go shopping when you are angry or starving. Here are people who had money and went shopping when they are, and they didn't establish the rules.
Yes.
And now they are caught in a situation where is there room for dissent? And what do we do with the dissent? How about if the principal don't like the report and all that?
Then how do we handle it? Now, this seems to be a story that won't be coming to a close soon. So, of course, it is developing, and we'll be talking about this for a while. But let's shift gear briefly. We have 5 minutes. Let's talk about Kibra. ODM warns DP on Raila insults. This is on page 5 of the Daily Nation. MPs allege that Ruto is not focused on the mini poll, but is looking for chaos, violence, and wars. This has been reported by the Daily Nation. We warn DP that Kibra is different. The voters here are dignified, united, and principled. This is a sentiment by an ODM MP. Dr. Ojuang, you
let's start from the speaker. Let's start from the speaker.
What's your take on this one? We have been told that we warned Dr. Ruto that Kibra is different. The voters here are dignified, united, and principled. When they are pushed to the wall and insulted, as Dr. Ruto is doing, they will respond. This is according to an ODM MP, and of course this is apparently about insults that have been,
hurled at the former Prime Minister.
Right.
Yeah. You see, Kenya is a very interesting country.
Yes.
Kenya is a country in which you come out yourself as a leader and you hurl insults. And then when insults are hurled again, as you say, this is not right. you know what I mean? Well, why should this be happening? And people then, you slap somebody, you'll be slapped also.